Super Bowl I, Packers over the Kansas City Chiefs 35-10. Super Bowl II, Packers over the Raiders 33-14. Super Bowl III, 16-7, the Jets over the Baltimore Colts. A lot of people think that was the reason the AFL and NFL merged. That's not true. It was Super Bowl IV, 23-7, the Chiefs over the Vikings. 2 years in a row, the AFL won. That really sealed it. Super Bowl V, as we all know, we talked about it, 16-13. Colts over the Cowboys, the only losing MVP in Super Bowl history. Chuck Howley, number 54, linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys. Super Bowl VI, 24-3. Cowboys over the Miami Dolphins. Super Bowl VII, 14-7, Miami in their perfect season over the Redskins. The irony here is that they had a kick, Miami did, in the fourth quarter that would have put them up 17-0 in the year that they went 17-0. But Garo Yepremian had that kick blocked, threw it away, and it was returned by Bass for a touchdown. That was the only score the Redskins had. Super Bowl VIII, 20, Miami over the Vikings. Super Bowl IX was 16-6, the Steelers over the Vikings. That was when Franco Harris set the record for the most rushing yards in Super Bowl history. Super Bowl X, 21-17, Steelers over the Cowboys. Super Bowl XI, 32-14, Fred Biletnikoff, the MVP, the Raiders over the Vikings. Super Bowl XII, 27-10, Cowboys over the Broncos, the only co-MVPs in Super Bowl history, Randy White and Harvey Martin. Super Bowl XIII, 35-31, Terry Bradshaw, the MVP. That was the game where Jackie Smith was wide open in the back of the end zone for the Cowboys and dropped a pass. Really changed the complete complexion of the game. Bowl 14, 31-19. That was the Steelers over the then Los Angeles Rams. Super Bowl 15, interestingly enough, back in New Orleans, where the Cowboys beat the Broncos by 27-10. 27-10 in the Superdome. Again, the final score, the Raiders over the Eagles. How screwed are defensive players. In that game, Rod Martin, linebacker for the Raiders, picked off Ron Jaworski 3 times. And he still wasn't the MVP. They gave it to Jim Plunkett. Super Bowl 16, 26-21 in Detroit. Or in Minneapolis. No, it's in Detroit. In Detroit, the Bengals fall to the 49ers. Joe Montana, the MVP. Super Bowl 17, 27-17, the Redskins over the Miami Dolphins. The big play there. John Riggins, the MVP. 4th and 1. Don McNeil hanging on to him. 18, 38-9, the Raiders over the Redskins. Big play in that game right before the half. Jack Squirick, backup linebacker, picks off Joe Theismann, runs it in for a touchdown at the end of the game. Marcus Allen, the MVP, because he had the 74-yard touchdown run in that game. Super Bowl 19, 38-16, the 49ers over the Dolphins. Joe Montana, the MVP. Great story. That was Dan Marino's second year in the league. He was all depressed. Jimmy Cephalo was a wide receiver on him. They're getting in the back of the limo, and Jimmy's depressed. 9 years in the league. I'll probably never get back here again. He gets in the back of the limo with Marino. Marino tosses him a beer and said, "Boy, did we get the shit kicked out of us or what?" Marino thought he would go back a million times. Never went back again. Super Bowl 20, 46-10, back in New Orleans. The Bears absolutely dismantle the New England Patriots. Richard Dent, the MVP. Super Bowl 21, 39-20. It was at the Rose Bowl. Phil Simms, the MVP, set the record in that game for the most. I think he was 22-24 completion percentage. Still the highest by any record in Super Bowl history. Super Bowl 22, 42-10. That was the Redskins over the Denver Broncos. They scored 35 points in the second quarter. Timmy Smith, the running back, ran for almost 200 yards in that game and still didn't get the MVP. They gave it to Doug Williams, the quarterback for the Washington Redskins. That's Super Bowl 22. Super Bowl 23, 20-16 in Miami. That was the comeback. Great story in that game. It was over the Bengals again. The 49ers beat the Bengals. In that game, as they're getting in for the game-winning drive, they're down 16-13. The Niners are all freaked out. Harris Barton, a former offensive lineman, tells this great story. They're all nervous. Joe Montana goes, "Hey, guys, check it out. Look over there. That's John Candy. Pretty cool, huh?" And they were like, "What the hell, man? We're trying to win a Super Bowl, and you're pointing out celebrities in the stands." But it calmed everybody down. And in that game, Jerry Rice was the MVP, but John Taylor caught the game-winning touchdown pass ahead of Ray Horton, the cornerback, and that was the game winner right there. In that game, Tim Crumride, the nose tackle for the Bengals, probably their best defensive player, broke his leg early in the game, changed the complexion of everything. Super Bowl 24, absolute destruction in New Orleans, 55-10, 49ers over the Denver Broncos. Joe Montana, once again, the MVP. Super Bowl 25, 20-19, the Giants over the Buffalo Bills, the beginning of the great Four Falls of Buffalo. In that game, Otis Anderson was the MVP. However, wide right, Scott Norwood, the best player on the field was Thurman Thomas. Go look at his numbers. If they had won, he would have won the MVP. Otis Anderson deserved it because he was great, but Thurman Thomas was the best player on the field. Super Bowl 26, 37-24. That game was in Minneapolis. In that game was the game where Thurman Thomas couldn't find his helmet. That year, Mark Ribbon decided to not sign a contract extension and bet on himself as a free agent. Made a fortune those days. Would have been 10 times more now. He was the MVP of that contest. Now we get into Nita's wheelhouse. Super Bowl 27, Rose Bowl, Pasadena, 52-17. Troy Aikman, the MVP. They were up 28-10 at the half. That was the game where Leon Lett, if he just crossed the goal line, Don Beebe, greatest hustle play of all time, stop him scoring there. Then it won 59-17. That would have been the most points ever scored in a Super Bowl by a single team. Jay Leno, who was doing the Tonight Show back then, had the greatest line of all time. He said, 52-17, is that a score or is Woody Allen dating again? Boom cha. But I digress. Next year, Super Bowl 28 in Atlanta, 30-13, the final score. Cowboys were down 13-6 at the half to Buffalo. First offensive series for Buffalo, they fumble. Safety James Washington picks it up, runs it back for a touchdown to tie the game at 13. The rest of the game, Troy Aikman was dealing with a concussion for the NFC Championship game, didn't play well. They had a drive where they went ahead. They handed it off to Emmitt Smith 7 straight times. Power, boom, power, boom, power, boom. They just beat the shit out of the Buffalo defense. 30-13, the final score. Emmitt Smith, the MVP. Super Bowl 29 was 49-26. It was the 49ers over the Chargers. In that game, Steve Young, high school quarterback for me at Greenwich High School, threw 6 touchdown passes. Yeah, still the benchmark, 49-26. I love that the 49ers scored 49 points in that game. Super Bowl 30, we talked about 27-17. That was in Tempe, Arizona. Larry Brown, the most unlikely of MVPs, picks off Neil O'Donnell, Pittsburgh quarterback, twice in the fourth quarter to seal the deal. Super Bowl 31. 35-21 back in New Orleans. It was the Packers over the New England Patriots, then coached by Bill Parcells. Desmond Howard, the MVP, a touchdown back for a kickoff back for a touchdown in that game. No, I didn't. Oh, you're right. You're right. Hold on. No, you're right. Hold on. 32-31-24 in San Diego. And San Diegan, Terrell Davis, the MVP. Great story in that game. Terrell Davis dealt with migraines. He forgot to take his migraine medication before that game. So he had a blinding headache and he needed to come out of the game. And Mike Shanahan, the head coach, came over and said, hey, I need you to go back in the game. He said, I can't see. He said, don't worry, we're not going to hand it to you, but they'll know we're not going to run it if you're not in the game. So what we're going to do, we're going to put you in the game, we're going to fake it to you, and we're going to throw a touchdown pass to fullback Derek Lavelle. I think that's what it was. And they caught that was a touchdown in that game, and that really set the tone. 31-24, the final score as the Packers were going for back-to-back Super Bowls. They didn't get it. Ironically, the very next year, Super Bowl 33, it was the Broncos that win back-to-back, 34-19 over the Dirty Bird Atlanta Falcons. In that game, the night before the Super Bowl in Miami, the Walter Payton Man of the Year, Eugene Robinson, safety for the Atlanta Falcons, was busted for solicitation of a prostitute. Now, he said he was witnessing to her. I don't know what to believe. That's fine. But the last thing you want to find out the day you're getting to go to the Super Bowl is that my starting all-pro safety has spent the night in jail. Very bad sign for the Atlanta Falcons. So that's Super Bowl 33. Super Bowl 34, 23-16, the greatest show on turf, gets their win over the Tennessee Titans. Mike Jones may be the greatest tackle in Super Bowl history. Steve McNair was leading the Tennessee Titans down for the game-tying score, and they hit Kevin Dyson, and Mike Jones tackled him 1 yard short of what would have been a potential tying touchdown, and the PAT would have tied it at 23. Super Bowl 35, 34-7, the Ravens over the New York Giants. That might have been the best defensive effort in Super Bowl history. The only score for the Giants in the game was a kick return. The defense essentially shut out Kerry Collins and the New York Giants. That was Super Bowl 35, right? Super Bowl 36, now we're getting to the Patriots era, 20-17. Back in New Orleans once again. Greatest show on turf comes up short. Highlaw picked off Kurt Warner for a pick six in that game. Tom Brady looked shaky the entire game, but on the final game-winning drive, John Madden was saying play for overtime. It was tied at 17, and they said, nope, we're going for it. And they won it. And Tom Brady, the legacy of Tom Brady was born in that game. So that's Super Bowl 30, Super Bowl 37, 48-20. That would be the Bucks over the Raiders. And this is a really interesting one. Brian Kelly was the MVP. It should have been Dexter Jackson. They both had 2 interceptions, and Dexter had one that went back for a touchdown. But they had already voted the MVP at that point by the time they ran that one back. So really, he had a better game than the MVP, but because they'd already voted for the MVP, that game was the last Super Bowl played in San Diego. Until then, the NFL said, get a new stadium, we won't come back. They never got a new stadium. Not only did the Super Bowl never come back, obviously the The Chargers left, so there's nothing there. So that was Super Bowl 37. Super Bowl 38 was in Houston, 32-29, the final score. In that game, Adam Vinatieri hits a game-winning field goal. The problem was, after the game was tied at 29, John Casey, the kicker for the Carolina Panthers, in the waning minutes, he kicked the kickoff out of bounds, giving the Patriots great field position in that situation. They marched down the field. Adam Vinatieri kicks the game winner, 32-29. Super Bowl 39, Jacksonville, 24-21. The Patriots repeat back-to-back until the Chiefs did it. That was the last back-to-back champion. In that game, Deion Branch was the MVP, but Terrell Owens was the best player on the field. Come back from a broken leg earlier in that regular season. Suffered when he was dragged down from behind by a horse collar by Roy Williams. That changed the horse collar rule. Terrell Owens was amazing, played coming off a broken leg, but Deion Branch was the MVP. Now we get to Super Bowl 40. Sad for you, my producer Duncan, because he's a Seahawks fan. 21-10, the final score. Jerome Bettis game. We going home to Detroit. In the divisional round that year, the Steelers were about to beat the Colts, clinch it away with a Jerome Bettis touchdown run. He fumbled, and it went to Nick Ferguson or Nick Harper. I think it was Nick Ferguson, the Colts, and he was about to run back for a touchdown that would have flipped the game completely. But that week, his wife or his girlfriend had stabbed him in the thigh over an altercation, so he couldn't quite run as far, and Ben Roethlisberger made the tackle to save that game. Yeah, and so that was a unique sort of backstory to that one. Mike Vanderjagt missed a kick so far wide right, it was ridiculous. That allowed them to go on and win that game. Hines Ward, the MVP. Super Bowl 41 in Miami, worst weather game in the history of the NFL. It rained the entire time, 29-17, the Colts over the Bears. They started that game with a kick return for a score for the Bears. Devin Hester took it back, and they still couldn't win. Peyton got the MVP, but the running game was really the key for the Colts in that game. The ground game was really, really the thing that did it. Super Bowl 42, back-to-back years for the Manning brothers to win. Eli, the MVP, in that game, 17-14, by the way. David Tyree, the helmet catch. Fun fact, I was covering postgame for that Super Bowl. And when you do postgame, they herd you down away from the thing in one pack to get inside the stadium. So for the final drive that the Giants scored on, or for one of the final drives, I can't see, okay? So I call Mark Schler and say, Mark, they're taking us down. I need you to tell me what's happening in the game. And here's how we describe the David Tyree helmet catch. Eli back to pass, runs around. Okay, it's caught. It's caught by David Tyree. So when the game was over, I saw Plexico Burress catch the game-winning touchdown in the corner of the end zone. I make a beeline. I'm getting a one-on-one interview with Plexico Burress. I'm like one of only two people around Plexico Burress. And I'm doing this interview. I'm like, this is amazing. I got the guy that scored the game-winning touchdown against the Patriots the year that they did all this and did all that. And I'm looking, why are 800 people around that special team scrub David Tyree? I had no idea. So I said, Mark, you're a great color guy. Never be a play-by-play guy because you are terrible at this. You completely screwed me over. I had no idea that David Tyree did anything along those lines. So that's Super Bowl 42. Super Bowl 43 was in Tampa, 27-23, the final score. Santonio Holmes toe tap in the back of the end zone to make the catch. If the Cardinals had won, Larry Fitzgerald would have been the MVP. James Harrison, by the way, had a score before the half, one of the longest touchdown plays in NFL history. He intercepted Kurt Warner right before the half and takes it all the way back. It was a 98 or 99-yard interception return for a score. Bruce Springsteen, by the way, the halftime entertainment in that one. That's Super Bowl 43, Super Bowl 44. Back in Miami, it's the Colts. Once again, back there taking on the Saints. Greatest onside kick in the history of the NFL. Sean Payton and the Saints call it to start the second half. They surprise onside. Hank Baskett, who at that point was dating, what was her name? That used to be on one of Hugh Hefner's wives at one point, or one of Hugh Hefner's girlfriends. I can't remember her name. You know who I'm talking about. She was a playmate at the Playmate match. Anyway, Hank Baskett on special teams couldn't cover the ball for the Colts. It was Kendra something. I can't remember her name. Anyway, 31-17, the final score. Peyton Manning was picked up by Tracy Porter. Pick six in that game. That was really the thing that turned everything around for the New Orleans Saints. That's Super Bowl 44, Super Bowl 45, 31-25, the final score. That's the only two scores at that point in the history of the NFL with 31-25 games, both losses by the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers, the MVP, as that game was won at then Jerry World, or Cowboy Stadium. Now it's AT&T Stadium. 31-25. That's Super Bowl 45. Super Bowl 46 back in Indianapolis. Arguably the greatest Super Bowl week we've ever had. Granted, the weather was warm. I understand that. 21-17, the final score. Giants once again over the Patriots. Interestingly enough, in that game, the difference in the game was on the first series, Justin Tuck broke through and almost tackled Tom Brady in the end zone, so he had to throw it away. That was a safety. because it was intentional grounding in the end zone. If they don't get that safety, instead of needing a touchdown to win late, all the Patriots would have needed was a field goal. So that the first series of that game changed the dynamic of that game completely. In that contest, Eli Manning, once again, the MVP. Super Bowl 47, 34-31. That game was in New Orleans. That was the one where the lights went out. No one knew what was going on. It completely changed. And when they had the time for that, it completely changed the game. The Ravens were doing everything great. The 49ers couldn't get out of their the 49ers were doing great. The Ravens couldn't get out their own way. Everything flipped in that game. 34-31, the final score. Joe Flacco, your MVP. Super Bowl 48, 43-8, the final score. That was the Peyton Manning year. I think as a Seahawks fan, you're very aware of that one. First play of that game was also a safety. They snapped the ball over Peyton Manning's head, and they never caught up. They never caught up in that game. And that was the year that Peyton Manning set the record, which stands to this day, 55 touchdowns, 5,477 passing yards. We've had 4 or 3 17-game seasons. No one's come close to those totals yet. 43-8, the final score. Malcolm Smith, your MVP, a linebacker. I had no idea who the hell they were going to name MVP of that game. They gave it to linebacker Malcolm Smith. So that was Super Bowl 48. Super Bowl 49, 28-24. Back in Glendale, Arizona. It was, sorry, as a Seahawks fan, that has to kill you, Duncan. Run the damn ball to Marshawn Lynch. Another great story. I was down doing post-game as well, and we were watching a tiny TV inside, and it's a little behind, okay? It's a little in closed circuit television. So we hear this amazing roar on the final drive for the Seahawks, and we're like, whoa, what happened? And I think that was it wasn't Baldwin. Was it Javon Curse? Jermaine Curse caught that juggling catch to set him up, right? So then a couple of plays later, we hear another roar, and I'm like, that's not as loud as the other roar. I bet you that's a Patriots roar. And that was the Malcolm Butler interception. Side note, if you're going to throw it at the goal line, don't throw it inside to your fourth best wide receiver. Throw a fade, throw it out. Don't throw it inside because the ball is tipped up and Malcolm Butler makes one of the most unbelievable plays in Super Bowl history. Super Bowl 49. Super Bowl 50, 24-10, the final score. That game was in San Francisco. Von Miller absolutely destroyed the Carolina Panthers. I have no idea what the Carolina offensive game plan was, but you had Von Miller on one side, DeMarcus Ware on the other side, and they had Cam Newton doing back 7-step drops all the time. Really a horrible game plan against a great pass rush. Peyton Manning wins his second MVP, the first quarterback ever to win a Super Bowl as a starter with 2 different teams, although he couldn't play dead in the Western in that game, let's be honest. It was the defense that carried them. Von Miller, the MVP in that game. Super Bowl 51. 34-28. Yeah, that game was in Houston. Again, bad play call. It's 28-12 at that point with 8.5 minutes to play. The Falcons are taking a 3rd and 1. And once again, on a 3rd and 1, they run a 7-step drop. 7-step drop. Dante Hightower strip sack of Matt Ryan. Ball comes loose. And Tom Brady, who had played like ass in that game. He was terrible. Suddenly he got a chance to win. Boom. Let's go do it. Gets there, gets the chance to win. And it just goes from there. And obviously Julian Edelman, the juggling catch. But if they had just run, even if they don't get it, just flip the field, take more time off the clock, that comeback probably never happens. To this day, I'll never understand why they called a 7-step drop on 3rd and 1. Kyle Shanahan, remember him, other questionable decisions coming in future Super Bowls, this time as the head coach of the 49ers. Okay, so then we go to Super Bowl 52, 41-33. That game was in Minneapolis. Nick Folk, legend, Philly special. Nick Folk, the MVP. By the way, in that year, here were the 4 quarterbacks starting in the conference championship games. In the AFC, it was Case Keenum. I don't care if you can name him. Case Keenum versus Nick Folk. Tom Brady versus Blake Bortles. And somehow the Patriots and Tom Brady did not win the Super Bowl that year. That defies all kinds of logic. It makes no damn sense. But anyway, 41-33. Zach Ertz with the great juggling catch to really seal the deal for the Philadelphia Eagles. Super Bowl 53, 13-3, the final score. The only touchdown in that game was a LeGarrette Blount run for a score. And the only reason that game is 13-3, by the way, that's the only of the Patriots' 6 Super Bowl wins that was by double digits. The only reason it was by double digits, the Rams on their last possession had a field goal that would have cut it to 13-6 and give them a fighting chance with time left and an onside kick, but they missed it. The MVP in that game was Julian Edelman. It should have been Stephon Gilmore, but it was Julian Edelman in that game. So that's Super Bowl 53. Super Bowl 54, welcome to the Kansas City era, 31-20, the final score. In that game, they're down by 10 with about 8 or 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And that's when they dial up, do we have time to run Wasp? And they get Tyreek Hill wide open down the end. That flipped everything, and they score a couple more times. Patrick Mahomes, the MVP, 31-20. Super Bowl 55, Tom Brady at home in Tampa, 31-9. They take care of the Kansas City Chiefs. Mahomes to this day, go watch the video of the Bucs players every time Mahomes escaped and threw something in, didn't get complete. Like, how did he get away? How did he do this? It was unbelievable. They still couldn't believe all the throws he almost completed as he was running for his life behind that offensive line. Then Super Bowl 56, back-to-back years, hometown team wins in their home Super Bowl. The Rams over the Bengals 23-20. Cooper Kupp the MVP in that contest. Things changed dramatically in that game when Odell Beckham Jr. went out with an injury and the Rams offense really struggled. And finally on the last drive, Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay said, F it, we're just going to Cooper Kupp on every play. And he scores the game-winning touchdown with a few minutes left, and then was pressure by Aaron Donald that on fourth down that really shut down the Bengals' chances. Again, they go on to win 23-20. Now we're into the meat of the Chiefs era next year. It's 38-35 back in Glendale, Arizona. Patrick Mahomes the MVP. In that game, they fell behind by 10 at the half, and they scored on every possession of the second half. And the only reason they just scored a touchdown because they ran out the clock after that holding call. To this day, Eagles fans are upset about it, but the guy who did it said, "Yeah, I held him." So it's not really a debate. It was pretty clear. And then the next year, 25-2 back in Vegas. The coolest thing about that is Mahomes was the MVP again. That was the worst year statistically Patrick Mahomes had ever had. And it was the fewest number of wins they ever had. And after the final game of the regular season, when he didn't play and they beat the Chargers, he texted on his group family chat, "I've decided we're winning the Super Bowl. Not that we're going, not that I think we can do it. I've decided we're going to win the Super Bowl. We are winning the Super Bowl." And on that final drive in overtime, go look at that drive. Mahomes did everything. He did everything on that drive, including a couple of great scrambles. Then he hit Mecole Hardman in the corner of the end zone for the game-winning touchdown. So that's Super Bowl 50. Yeah, Super Bowl 58. And last year, Super Bowl 59, 40-22, the final score. Once again, back in New Orleans, Jalen Hurts, your MVP. There you have it.